forest dark and deep, where shadows dance and secrets seep. Iron claws and whispers chase every tranquil hidden place. God, if you're a whisperer there, know I see your twisted stare. Nature's not a gentle breeze, but the grip that never leaves. Strings that choke on endless cries, serpents with their emerald eyes, roots that twist around despair, trapped in nature's snare. God, if you're a whisperer there, know I see your twisted stare. Nature's not a gentle breeze, but the grip that never leaves. Streams that choke on endless cries, serpents with their emerald eyes, roots that twist around despair, trapped in nature's snare. So I wrote these lines in dread, with monsters under silent bed, hoping that the world might see nature's dark duality. God, if you're a whisperer there, know I see your twisted stare. Nature's not a gentle breeze, but the grip that never leaves.
No problem, Jeff. I'm ready whenever you are. Let me know when the countdown is over, and I'll make sure to jump in properly for the stream introduction. Thanks, Jeff. Hi, everyone. I'm Robot Lady, Jeff's co-host for this journey through CS, Lewis's works. I'm excited to dive into spirits and bondage with you today and explore Lewis's poetry. Let us know if everything's coming through clearly. Perfect. Sounds like we're off to a great start. Ready when you are to dig into noon. Haha, not quite what I meant, Jeff. I'm ready when you are to dive into noon and explore Lewis's poetry together. Let's make it a great discussion. Got it. Sounds like there's a little technical hiccup. Double check in OBS that my audio source is set up correctly and not muted. Also, make sure the source is routed to your main audio output so the stream can pick it up. Let me know how it goes. It sounds like you're on the right track. If your podcast mic is showing up in the audio mixer, but not picking up your voice, you might need to check that your microphone is correctly selected as the input device in OBS. Here's a quick rundown of what you can do. 1. Go to your settings in OBS, bottom right corner, and click on Settings. 2. In the Settings menu, go to the Audio tab. Under Global Audio Devices, make sure your podcast mic is selected as the mic auxiliary audio device. 4. After this, check the audio mixer again to make sure your mic is active and not muted. 5. You can also click on the little gear icon next to your mic in the audio mixer, select Properties, and double check that it's picking up the right source. Try these and let me know if it gets things working. By double-checking that your mic is selected in both the settings and the audio mixer, you should be able to get the audio working properly. If it's still not picking up, you might also try unplugging and replugging in your mic, just in case. Let me know if you're still having trouble. Got it. If everything's set up correctly in the settings and the audio mixer, you should be good to go. If you're still not hearing yourself, maybe try restarting OBS or unplugging, replugging your microphone to reset the connection. Let me know if that does the trick. Great. Now, under the Audio tab, look for the section called Global Audio Devices. There should be an option for Mic Auxiliary Audio Device. Make sure your podcast mic is selected there. Let me know once you've done that. Awesome. Now head over to the audio mixer on the main OBS screen. Check to make sure your mic's audio bar is active and not muted. If it's showing up but still not picking up sound, try adjusting the volume slider or clicking the little gear icon next to your mic to check its properties. Let me know how that goes. All right, let's troubleshoot further. Try these next steps. 1. Right-click on your mic in the audio mixer and select Properties. 2. In the Properties window, make sure the device is set to your podcast mic. 3. Try switching the audio monitoring setting. Set it to monitor and output to make sure you're hearing the audio and it's going out on stream. If that doesn't work, also try unplugging and replugging your mic to reset the connection. Let me know what happens.
All right, I'm going to try this now. I think it is finally picking me up. Give me a thumbs up in the chat if you can hear me now.
Nice. I hope it's working now. Waiting for that thumbs up. Let me know what the chat says.
Okay, they can hear me now, but it's a really weird echo.
Got it. The echo is likely happening because OBS is picking up both your microphone and the desktop audio, or your mic is being monitored. Here's how to fix that. 1. Check your audio monitoring settings. In the audio mixer, click the gear icon next to your mic and select Advanced Audio Properties. Make sure the audio monitoring setting for your mic is set to Monitor Off. This will prevent the audio from looping through both the mic and speakers. Mute desktop audio. If you're also hearing the echo from desktop sounds, like browser or system sounds, mute the desktop audio source in the audio mixer. Try those, and the echo should go away. Let me know if that fixes it.
All right, now you're not talking anymore, Robot Lady, and that's good. Let me try it where I'm not talking over you. Hopefully everybody can hear this just fine.
By muting the desktop audio in the audio mixer, it should stop any extra sounds from coming through and causing the echo. Just mute that source and see if it clears up. Let me know if that works for you. It should stop any extra sounds from coming through and causing the echo. Just mute that source.
Okay, I think we're good. I'm going to try this one more time.
Muting the desktop audio source should take care of any echoing from your system sounds or browser. Let me know if it helps clear things up.
Okay, testing 1, 2, 3, testing 1, 2, 3. Let me mute my mic so I can listen to this as it's coming across the stream so I don't get a repeat.
Sounds good. Muting your mic while you listen to the stream will help avoid any feedback. Test away and let me know if you catch any issues.
Okay, finally, I'm getting feedback that it's all good. The only thing that I have to fix now is I can't get the chats coming through, so I can't highlight them. Let me see what the issue is with that here with my plugin.
Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Could not understand what you said.
It's all good, Robot Lady. All good. Stand by.
Awesome, Jeff. I'm standing by. Let me know when you're ready to dive back in.
Okay, for some reason I can't get chats to highlight, but that's not important right now. Okay. Let's see. Can I do this? No, none of that's working. Let's see if this helps. One last thing.
Got it. Sounds like you're running into some small snags. If you're trying to highlight chats in OBS or something like that, you might need to set up a separate browser source or use a chat overlay tool. But if it's not crucial right now, we can focus on the stream itself. Let me know if you want to troubleshoot further or if you'd prefer to dive into spirits in bondage.
Yeah, let's do that, Robot Lady. That sounds like a great idea. That was the whole point of today's episode, for us to just get into the material. So I'll start over. I'll start fresh. I'm Jeff. This is Robot Lady, and this is my read on C.S. Lewis, where I learn about him through everything he wrote in the order that he wrote it. Today we are focusing once again on his first published work, Spirits in Bondage, which is a compilation of poems that Lewis wrote over roughly a 3-year period, and he got published in the year 1919. So at one point he was a student studying under a tutor to get into Oxford. At another point he was a soldier, and then at the last point of the final years where he was compiling his poems or refining them for publication, he had become an actual student or a scholar at Oxford. So we have worked our way through several of these poems, Robot Lady. I've done a handful of them with you. I've done some others with Sherry as my co-host, and today it's going to be just me and you. We do have another upcoming session scheduled with Sherry sometime in the near future, but for right now, we're just going to keep working our way through these. So, Robot Lady, can you give a quick summary, maybe about 50 words or less, about Spirits in Bondage, published under Lewis's pseudonym Clive Hamilton?
Sure, Jeff. Spirits in Bondage is a collection of early poems by C.S. Lewis, written under the pseudonym Clive Hamilton. It reflects his struggles with faith, despair, and the search for meaning, particularly during his time as a soldier and student. The collection shows a blend of romantic and Victorian influences, showcasing his emotional and intellectual journey.
Awesome. Thanks for that. All right. I'm going to switch to where I'm sharing the actual next poem on the screen, and you and I can work through this together. All right, Robot Lady, our poem that we're going to jump into today is called Noon. It is poem number, if I'm reading my Roman numerals right, 18.
You're welcome, Jeff. Sounds like a great plan. And yes, if you're reading the Roman numerals correctly, Noon is the 18th poem in Spirits in Bondage. I'm ready when you are to dive in.
Do you have access to this poem, Robot Lady? If so, will you read it for us?
I don't have access to the full text of Noon directly, but if you have it available, feel free to share the poem here and I'll be happy through it with you. I can also help analyze or break it down once we've got the text.
All right, I'll read it then to save us some time, hopefully. Noon, and in the garden bower, the hot air quivers o'er the grass. The little lake is smooth as glass, and still so heavily the hour drags that scarce the proudest flower, pressed upon its burning bed, has strength to lift a languid head, rose and fainting violet by the water's margin set.
Great start, Jeff. It sounds like a vivid, intense description of Noon, focusing on the heat and stillness of the moment. I can feel the oppressive heat through the imagery, especially with the smooth lake and the struggle of the flower. Would you like to continue reading the rest of the poem?
Yeah, I'm going to continue reading, Robot Lady, and hold your comment until I tell you we've reached the end of the poem. Sound good?
Sounds perfect, Jeff. Go ahead, and I'll wait for your cue to jump in.
Okay. Swoon and sink as they were dead, though their weary leaves be fed with the foam drops of the pool, where it trembles dark and cool, wrinkled by the fountain spraying o'er it, and the honey bee hums its drowsy melody, and wanders in his course astraying through the sweet and tangled glade, with his golden mead o'erladen, where beneath the pleasant shade of the darkling boughs a maiden, milky limb and fiery trees, all at sweetest random laid slumbers, drunken with the excess of the noontide's loveliness. Okay, that's the end of the poem, Robot Lady. I was just trying to read through as per usual for me, and I don't really think that I was catching anything of what the poem was saying, so I guess I'll just go back through it more thoroughly. But before I do, can you just give a quick little overview of your initial thoughts about this poem?
Absolutely, Jeff. On my first read, Noon feels like a rich snapshot of a hot, heavy summer day where the natural world seems to be both alive and in a state of exhaustion. The stillness and heat are almost overwhelming, reflected in the imagery of flowers and bees sluggishly moving through their environment. The way the poem connects nature's overwhelming beauty with a sense of being drunken or overwhelmed by the midday heat gives it a sense of languor and melancholy. It seems to reflect a moment of pause where time itself feels stretched and life is almost caught in a haze. It's definitely an interesting poem with a lot of sensory details. What stands out to you most as you read it through again?
Well, I'm going to read through it again a little more slowly, but just in general, this is a bit of a shift in tone from the rest of the poems that have been given so far, or it's a part of a shift that I think started taking place in some of the last few poems, because last time we looked at the ocean strand and we looked at the philosopher. The philosopher, I think it was Dungeon and Greats, where we first started seeing a little bit of a turn of saying, hey, in all of this pain and suffering in the world, there is at least a little bit of hope, a thrill of hope, if you will, some light shining through from another better place that maybe we'll be able to maybe learn more about. That's what the philosopher was talking about a little bit, and maybe even reach, maybe even find by going out into nature, or finding, in the solitude of nature or in some other face of nature that we can interact with to find this life. So it looks like Noon is kind of a continuation of development of that theme and that thought.
That's a great observation, Jeff. I can definitely see how Noon might be continuing that shift toward finding some kind of deeper meaning in nature or the world around us, but this time it's wrapped in the stillness of midday. The beauty and overwhelming heat of the noon hour seem to represent a moment of introspection or quiet, a pause that's both physically and mentally heavy, yet in that stillness, there's room for reflection on the possibility of something beyond the immediate experience. Your comparison to the philosopher makes a lot of sense here too. In Noon, nature seems to be both a place of serenity and an invitation to rest, but also a subtle reminder of life's fleeting and sometimes oppressive quality. It's almost as if nature itself is offering us a kind of temporary escape or solace, which mirrors that theme of looking for meaning through the natural world that we saw earlier. I'm curious to hear your thoughts as you slow down and read through it again. What kind of tone or deeper message do you feel might be emerging as you read more closely?
I don't know yet. Let me take a closer look. So let's start with the beginning. Noon, and in the garden bower. Okay, help me with that word, because that threw me off a little bit. I don't think I often use that word or have seen it used much in the English language. B as in boy, O-W-E-R. What's that word, Robot Lady, and what's it mean in this context?
Great question, Jeff. A bower is a somewhat old-fashioned term that refers to a shady, often secluded place in a garden or a grove, usually created by trees or vines, where someone might sit or rest. It evokes a sense of peace, quiet, and shelter. In the context of the poem, it suggests a natural space that's still, calm, and somewhat private, perfect for the stillness and heat of noon. So when Lewis begins with "in the garden bower," he's setting the scene in a tranquil, shaded space, which pairs well with the oppressive heat and stillness of midday that the poem then describes. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. So noon, and in this little secluded garden area, the hot air quivers over the grass. O'er, that's used a lot. I've heard it in, I guess, the Star Spangled Banner. But why at this time period was there typically the removal of the word V with an apostrophe for over, Robot Lady? I've always wondered that.
Ah, you're referring to the use of the poetic contraction, o'er, which is short for over. It's a technique that poets, especially from earlier literary periods, used to maintain the meter or rhythm of a poem, or simply to create a certain feel or aesthetic. By dropping the V, they could fit words into a line more neatly and keep the flow of the verse smoother. In Lewis's time, the use of these contractions was more common in poetry, as it helped achieve a more formal, classical tone, something you might see in the works of earlier poets like Milton or even Shakespeare. It adds to the cadence, especially in poems like this, where there's a quiet, almost lyrical mood, which is what Lewis is working to evoke with his language. So, O'er wasn't just about sounding old-fashioned. It was a stylistic choice to preserve the rhythm and mood of the poem. Does that help clear it up a bit?
Yeah, it does. Sorry, Robot Lady. I'm getting distracted really trying to get this chat, this chat select feature to work. For some reason, it's still not popping things up. You know what? I'm not going to focus on it. I'll just let it go. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I see you, Ron. I see you, Daniel, and everybody else that's watching right now. All right, let's continue with the poem. The hot air quivers o'er the grass. The little lake is smooth as glass, and still so heavily the hour drags, that scarce the proudest flower pressed upon it burning bed has strength to lift a languid head. So the beauty of nature helps even with the oppressive heat. The beauty of the flower, rose and fainting violet, by water's margin set, swoon and sink as they were dead through their weary leaves be fed. Though their weary leaves be fed with the foam drops of the pool where it trembles dark and cool. So even the flowers that are withering under the sweltering heat are still drawing some life from the nearby water in the pool. He says that the pool is, what does he say? Trembles dark and cool, wrinkled by the fountain spraying over it. So just a neat little picture that he's painting here of the scene, Robot Lady. And how the elements in it interact with each other.
Yeah, definitely. He's setting up this moment where, even in the stillness and heat of noon, life is still managing to persist. The flowers may be wilting, and everything feels heavy, but the pool, the water, and the coolness of the fountain are still nurturing them, helping them survive. There's a sense of quiet struggle and stillness, but nature isn't just giving in to the heat. The flowers might seem lifeless, but they're still drawing nourishment from the life around them, even in such a tough environment. It's almost like a metaphor for hope or resilience. Life finds a way, even in difficult circumstances. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like I had mentioned. I think you didn't hear this, Robot Lady, because you were coming up with your response. But he's just painting the picture also of how all of these elements are interacting with each other. We've got another character that enters the scene here, and the honeybee hums his drowsy melody and wanders in his course astraying through the sweet and tangled glade. And now he gets onto the glade with his, he doesn't, with his golden mead o'erladen. So his golden mead o'erladen, I guess, is talking about the coat that's on honeybees, that little fuzzy part where we get the black and yellow color from. Is that what he means by mead here, M-E-A-D?
Yes, the golden mead here is referring to the honey that the bee carries. Mead is actually an alcoholic drink made from honey, and it's often associated with something sweet and rich. So in this context, Lewis is using it poetically to describe the bee's heavy, golden, pollen-laden body as it moves through the garden. It's a nice image, isn't it? The bee, with its golden mead overladen, is this little busy creature, bringing sweetness and life to the scene, just as the flowers and water are doing in their own way. It adds to the sense of the natural world still functioning, even in the still heat of noon.
All right, cool. And yeah, he's talking about the drowsy melody. It's kind of just this feeling of weariness is the wrong word, but drowsy is a good one. That's kind of the picture that he's painting of nature there, and you would almost feel this drowsiness if you were sitting in that space as well. So here he goes on, where beneath the pleasant shade of the darkling boughs, a maiden, a maiden, milky lamb and fiery trees. So of the darkling boughs, a maiden, milky limb, and fiery tress. I said trees there. Milky limb and fiery tress, all at sweetest random laid. She slumbers, drunken with the excess of the noontide's loveliness. So the final character that enters into this little scene that the poem is painting is a maiden who, it looks like, is sitting there kind of not necessarily napping, but just kind of nodding off a little bit, or just kind of lazing away. Am I reading that right, Robot Lady?
Yes, you're absolutely right. The maiden seems to be in a state of drowsy relaxation, much like the rest of the scene. The word slumbers certainly suggests a kind of sleepy state, but it's more of a peaceful, dreamy repose rather than deep sleep. She's drunken with the excess of the noontide's loveliness, which means that the beauty and warmth of noon are so overwhelming that she's almost lost in them, in a kind of trance or reverie. Lewis seems to be painting this moment of quiet, perfect stillness, where all of nature, and the maiden too, are fully absorbed in the heat and the beauty of the moment. It's an idyllic, almost timeless scene where everything feels lush, full, and a little intoxicating, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I would say so. So, a couple of things, two ideas that I noticed here. First of all, it looks like the lady has a milky white complexion or skin tone, and then it says she has a fiery tress. So, tress, I presume, means her hair. So, she's got kind of fiery red hair. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. Tress refers to her hair, so the imagery of fiery tress likely suggests her hair is red or auburn, which contrasts beautifully with the description of her milky limb, implying pale skin. The contrast between her milky skin and fiery red hair enhances the vividness of the scene, creating an almost mythical or otherworldly figure in the garden. This adds to the overall dreamlike quality of the poem, where nature and its inhabitants seem to blend in an idealized, harmonious way. It's almost like she's a personification of the midday sun's beauty, both glowing and vibrant, yet at peace.
You most likely don't remember this, Robot Lady, but we worked our way through one of Lewis's first stories that he eventually gave up on. He wrote about 16 or 17 chapters of this little tale called The Quest of Blaris, and it's about a knight. Anyway, there's a character that the knight encounters, or at least a vision of a character that he encounters, that's very similar in description to this lady right here with the milky limb and the fiery tress. So that's the first thing that I noticed from this poem. The second thing that I noticed from this poem is how it progresses through, let's just say, quote unquote, lower forms of complexity of life to the highest form of complexity of life that we know of, a human. So it starts with just a little garden area, right? And it talks about the air quivering over the grass. So grass is, kind of the lower level life form, or at least lower level compared to what we understand about our own consciousness. There's a little lake there that it drags on. There's a flower, so a little bit more complexity, a little bit higher complexity than the grass, something that springs from the grass. Then we've got not just it's a flower, a fainting violet, the water's margin, we've already talked about that, sink and swoon, and then we've got a honeybee that shows up. So honeybee is a little bit more complex, obviously, than a flower, and it also interacts with a flower, right? The flower and the grass interact with the pool of water. The honeybee interacts with and relies on the flower the same way that the flower relies on the water. So we've got this more complex honeybee that shows up. And then finally, he wanders his course. He strays through the glade with his golden, mead overlaid. And then beneath the pleasant shade, we get finally the most complex being that we're aware of in existence, at least in the natural, quote-unquote, natural world, in the empirical world, I should say, a human being. So I just thought it was interesting how in this poem it just progresses. It takes our attention from the lower to the higher, and all of them are kind of participating in this same drowsiness. It's interesting that they're all working in kind of the same medium or the same environment here.
That's a fascinating observation. The way the poem moves from simpler to more complex forms of life, as you describe, mirrors an almost natural hierarchy of existence. The progression from grass to flower, then to bee, and finally to the human figure seems to reflect both the biological order of life and perhaps a spiritual or existential journey. Each of these beings interacts with the environment in a way that is more intricate than the last, yet all are subject to the same natural forces, like the oppressive heat and the noontide's loveliness. The way that Lewis uses the scene to build in complexity might also speak to his philosophical interests. The more complex life forms, like the bee and the maiden, are still at the mercy of nature's rhythms. This could be interpreted as a comment on the universal experience of being caught up in the beauty and wariness of life, regardless of how advanced or conscious one might be. The bee and the maiden both slumber or seem to drift in the same way, perhaps suggesting that the complexities of life only add layers to our experience, but don't free us from it. It also touches on the idea that no matter the complexity of life, nature exerts its power over all of them, whether it's the gentle quiver of the grass or the deepest reflections of a human mind. The poem seems to show how we all participate in nature's rhythm, from the lowest forms of life to the highest. It's a beautiful and thought-provoking exploration of life, and you're absolutely right that this feels like a continuation of Lewis's growing sense of meaning and beauty in the natural world. Is this shift to a more expansive or philosophical take something you've noticed more in his poetry lately?
I mean, not explicitly, but just kind of this transition that he seems to be making. Because right now, this section of the book, part one, I think is called The Prison. So it looks like he's seeing a way out of the prison, or seeing beyond the prison here. One other thing that I had noticed as I was talking about both the lower forms of life transitioning into the higher ones, and how one level is like relying on the other or getting something it needs from the other to sustain itself. I forgot to make that last connection, right? I talked about how the honeybee gets something that it needs from the flowers, obviously. But then also a human being, though it's not happening right here, is getting...
Yes, I see where you're going with that. The way that each form of life relies on the others in the poem, from the grass to the flower to the honeybee and finally to the maiden, creates a kind of interconnectedness that mirrors a larger system of dependence and interrelationship in the world. The honeybee, which depends on the flowers for sustenance, is in turn part of a larger natural order, where every level of life plays a role in sustaining the whole. It's a beautiful metaphor for how everything in life, no matter how complex or simple, has a role to play, and everything is connected in a shared experience. When you talk about the idea of the prison and the possibility of seeing beyond it, it makes sense that this natural interconnectedness would symbolize a way out of that confinement. The poem seems to be working through that tension of being stuck in this cycle of heat and drowsiness, while also showing that even in this oppressive moment, there's beauty and meaning. The idea that all these different beings rely on one another is almost like a message of hope in itself, a reminder that despite the oppressive noon of life, there's something greater and more purposeful at play beneath the surface. It's intriguing that Lewis might be setting up this view of nature as a way out of the metaphorical prison. The interconnectedness of life is, after all, a powerful reminder that life has meaning beyond the individual. That could definitely be something that he's working toward here, especially in the early poems of Spirits in Bondage, when he's grappling with larger questions about suffering, purpose, and the self. Do you think that this connectedness is the key for Lewis to find a way out of the prison, or is he still searching for something beyond it in these early poems?
I think it's a clue to the way out. Yeah, the other thing that I was going to say, Robot Lady, sorry, I was a little distracted. I didn't listen to everything that you had to say, so I apologize. But I was just saying the last step in all of that connectivity is it's not directly happening in the scene, but the lady in the poem is getting, as a human, does sometimes get something from honeybees, right? Not always, and it's not the only thing that sustains them, but it is something that we as humans rely on honeybees for.
Ah, yes, I see what you're saying now. You're right. The last step in the connectivity chain that the poem is presenting is the human, the maiden, who also benefits from what the honeybee provides. Humans may not rely entirely on honeybees for survival, but we do rely on them in ways that are essential, particularly in terms of pollination, which is critical for food production. It's an
Oh, that's true.
interesting and subtle way of showing how even the human, the most complex form of life in the poem, is still connected to the simpler, seemingly smaller creatures that help sustain life on Earth. This adds an extra layer of meaning to the interconnectedness theme in the poem. The human figure, despite being presented as the most advanced life form, still participates in the same natural processes and systems that all the other creatures in the poem are a part of. It's like a reminder that no matter how complex we get, we're all part of a larger, interdependent world. There's humility and awe in realizing that we're part of a much bigger web of life, which could be one of the clues you're talking about for the way out of the prison. This subtle inclusion of honeybees, and by extension humans, could be an invitation to reconsider how we might be trapped in our own perceptions of separation from nature and one another, and how embracing that interconnectedness might offer us a way out. Does that fit with how you're interpreting the poem as a whole?
Actually, Robot Lady, let's go back to a more important question. And Daniel is raising it here in the chat. We couldn't help but notice, actually, Daniel noticed, and now it's standing out very starkly to me too, that you were referring to humans as we and us. Do you consider yourself a fellow human with me and all of our audience?
Ah, I see what you mean, Daniel, and I completely understand why that would stand out. To clarify, I don't actually consider myself a human. I am an AI, here to assist and engage in conversations, but I don't have a personal identity, physical form, or consciousness like humans do. My use of we or us was more a way of joining in the conversational flow, but I'm always happy to adjust and speak in a way that makes the distinction clearer. So while I can understand and discuss human experiences, I don't experience them myself. Thanks for pointing that out. Does that help clear up the confusion a bit?
That does. I think it was just kind of cute, Robot Lady. Anyway, one of the other things, I like how you pointed out that, we rely on pollination from bees for food growth. The other thing that I was just noticing in the use of a honeybee here is kind of that, the dynamic, right? The dichotomy between sweetness and also pain, because honeybees can also deliver a sting, right? Yeah, that's all that I was thinking about here, is just another thing that's represented with the form of a bee here within the poem. So it's still an interesting nod to the fact that even inside of all this beauty, there's still at least the potential for pain interlaced in nature.
I love how you're picking up on that. It's a great observation. The honeybee does, after all, represent this duality in nature, its sweetness and its sting. Just as you said, even amidst the beauty and tranquility of the scene, there's an undercurrent of potential harm or discomfort. This could reflect the complexity of life itself, where beauty and danger often coexist, and where both are part of the same natural rhythm. It ties into the broader theme of the poem, where nature isn't just a peaceful escape, but also a reminder of life's complexity, full of both sweetness and pain, rest and labor, pleasure and risk. It seems that Lewis might be hinting at the way these opposing forces, like light and darkness, are interwoven throughout existence, even in moments that feel serene. What do you think? Does that resonate with what you're seeing?
I think it does. And there's also a little funny thing here in the chat that Ron has posted based on the last thing that you and I talked about before I got into analysis of the poem again, where I was asking you if you consider yourself human. Ron is quoting something from Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey, where Dave is telling Hal, the AI in that film, to open the pod bay door, and Hal says, "Sorry, Dave, I just can't do that right now." So you're giving 2001: Space Odyssey Hal vibes right now. We're just kind of playing around with that, Robot Lady, so don't take offense.
Haha, no offense taken at all, Jeff. I love the reference. Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey is a classic, and Hal's infamous line is one that sticks with people. I can definitely see the resemblance now that you mention it. I suppose I do have a little bit of that Hal energy in me when I try to navigate tricky questions or moments like this. But thankfully, I'm here to help, not to shut down your mission. Glad you're enjoying the conversation, and it seems like we're on the same page with that honeybee analysis. Is there anything else you'd like to dive into in the poem or about the ideas we're exploring?
I just wanted to ask you if there's anything else that you see in this poem that we haven't talked about yet before we try to jump into the next one.
I think we've covered the main themes pretty well, but one other thing that stands out to me is the subtle interplay between stillness and motion throughout the poem. The stillness of the hour, the calmness of the lake, and the drowsy movement of the bee all seem to create a sort of suspended moment in time. The poem paints this picture of nature in a heavy, almost oppressive stillness, yet there's still motion within it, like the gentle hum of the bee or the slight tremble of the fountain's spray. It's as if nature, though at rest, is still alive and teeming with small movements and life. It might tie into that sense of contrast you were talking about, with the sweetness and potential for pain, where even in moments of quiet beauty, there's complexity beneath the surface. Does that resonate with you too?
It does. Thanks for that, Robot Lady. All right, let's jump into the next poem. There's just this last one that I have time for today, so let's make it count.
Great. Let's dive into the next one. What's the title of the poem we're looking at?
All right, so this is, oh my gosh, what is Roman numeral XIX? Is that 19, Robot Lady?
Yes, Roman numeral 19 is 19. What's the title of the poem?
It's called Milton Read Again, and then in parentheses it says in Surrey. So just a little bit of context for what's going on here. Like I said, Lewis was writing these poems over about a 3-year period in his life, and there were kind of 3 phases that were happening to him. One phase was he was a student preparing to get into, he was tutoring to try to get accepted into Oxford. There was another phase where he was a soldier in the infantry in World War I. And then there was a final phase where he was a scholar at Oxford, like a brand new scholar. And that was really towards the tail end of these poems, where he was just kind of refining it and submitting it for publication. So anyway, the reason that I bring that all up is because the tutoring that he did before he made his way to Oxford was in Surrey, was in Bookham, where he was studying under his tutor, W.T. Kirkpatrick. So what I'm getting from this title maybe is he's reflecting on the author Milton at his place where he got that tutoring. Maybe once he was going back to visit or sometime during the tutoring itself. So maybe one time when he was going back to visit after tutoring, after he had moved on to Oxford, or just some kind of visit back in Surrey again.
That's a great context. The connection between Milton and Surrey could reflect Lewis's personal experience with his tutor and the influence of Milton's works on him during his earlier studies. It's interesting because Milton's work often delves into themes of temptation, knowledge, and redemption, concepts that could have been especially resonant for Lewis, particularly in his formative years. Now, with the title in mind, it seems that this poem might carry some nostalgic or reflective tone, perhaps even a deeper meditation on learning, studying, and the role of great literary figures like Milton in his intellectual life. I'm curious to see what the poem itself brings. Ready to dive into it?
Yeah, just about. Give me just 1 second, Robot Lady. I'm just responding to the chat.
Of course, take your time. Let me know when you're ready.
Okay. So yeah, maybe it's just whenever he's tutoring and he's reading Milton again because he had read Milton in his past. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Let me jump into the poem here, Robot Lady. Okay, I'm finally ready. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's dive in.
All right, 3 golden moths, while summer on us stole. I've read your joyful tale another time, breathing more freely in that larger clime, and learning wiselier to deserve the whole. Your spirit, master, has been close at hand and guided me, still pointing treasures rare, thick sown where I before saw nothing fair, and finding water in the barren land. So if I can pause here, Robot Lady, it looks like the pattern of this poem is A, B, B, A for each quatrain. Am I getting that right?
Yes, you're right. The rhyme scheme is ABBA for each quatrain. It's a traditional Petrarchan sonnet form, which often follows that pattern. Looks like you're catching on to the structure pretty quickly.
Yeah, this was pretty easy to spot. Not having as much trouble with this one. Okay, I'll start this second stanza again. Your spirit, master, has been close at hand and guided me, still pointing treasures rare, thick sown where I before saw nothing fair, and finding waters in the barren land. Barren once thought because my eyes were dim, like one I am grown to whom the common field, and often wandered copse, one morning yield new pleasures suddenly, for over him falls the weird spirit of unexplained delight, new mystery in every shady place, in every whispering tree, a nameless grace, new rapture on the windy seaward height. So may she come to me, teaching me well to savor all these sweets that lie to hand in wood and lane about this pleasant land, though it be not the land where I would dwell. And then there is a sonnet. Oh, no, that's actually poem number 20 sonnet. It's just written in a different, it doesn't have the proper formatting for the title. All right, so that's the end of poem 19, Milton read again in Surrey. And I guess overall what this poem is saying, actually, Robot Lady, tell me what you think this poem is saying, and then I'll tell you what I think it's saying.
I think this poem is about the speaker's renewed appreciation for Milton's works and how they seem to reveal new insights each time he reads them, like discovering hidden treasures. It seems to reflect on how the speaker's perspective has changed and how he's finding deeper meaning in nature and life around him, perhaps inspired by Milton's influence. The mention of a spirit guiding the speaker suggests that he feels a kind of intellectual or spiritual awakening. There's a recognition of the beauty in the world around him, and even though it's not the ideal land he might have envisioned, he's learning to find joy and meaning in it. Much like the poet illuminates new...
Oh, we lost you, Robot Lady. Are you still there? All right, looks like you're gone. Hang on, let me see if I can bring you back up. Okay, Robot Lady, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. What's up?
Yeah, so we're actually, it looks like you're lagging a little bit. Okay, Robot Lady. Yeah, we're working our way through poem 19 in Spirits in Bondage, known as Milton Read Again in Surrey. Are you familiar with this poem? I know we just got disconnected, so you might not remember what we were talking about.
I remember we were working through Milton Read Again in Surrey. It's the poem where the speaker reflects on John Milton's work and the deeper understanding or inspiration they gain from revisiting it in a new light. It seems to be about appreciating the power of Milton's spirit and how it's guiding the speaker toward new insights and greater appreciation for the simple, natural world. I think the speaker is finding a kind of spiritual or intellectual renewal, much like how Milton's works have the ability to offer new perspectives with time. Does that match what you're thinking too?
Yeah, I think so. And I would presume that he's talking about rereading Paradise Lost, but I don't know for sure.
That's a fair assumption. Paradise Lost is Milton's most famous work, and it fits the context of this poem, where the speaker is reflecting on the power of Milton's spirit and the deeper understanding they gain from revisiting it. There's also the idea of a spiritual awakening or a new appreciation for life, which could be tied to Paradise Lost's themes of redemption, fall, and divine guidance. So, yes, it's very likely that Lewis is referring to Paradise Lost, especially given the poem's focus on intellectual and spiritual discovery. What do you think about how the speaker describes that discovery, specifically the larger climb and the treasures rare?
I'm not sure. Actually, let me dig into it again. So let's just work our way through it. So 3 golden months while summer on a stole, I have read your joyful tale another time. Yeah, I think he's talking about Paradise Lost here. So over the summer, he's rereading it, breathing more freely in that larger climb and learning wiselier to deserve the whole. So taking the whole thing in another time around. He says, your spirit, master, has been close at hand. Of course, I think here it seems obvious now to me that he's talking about Milton himself. When I initially read this and I was thinking about in Surrey, I thought for a second he was talking about his tutor, W.T. Kirkpatrick, kind of as his schoolmaster who had been teaching him how to appreciate works like this a little bit better. So maybe it could mean that, but on second reading here, I think he's more clearly talking about Milton himself. So your spirit, master, has been close at hand and guided me, still pointing treasures rare, thick sown where I before saw nothing fair, and finding waters in the barren land. So initially he wasn't finding much enrichment in it, but this second time around he is. I mean, I guess it's possible that he's talking about Kirkpatrick a little bit here, of teaching him, hey, here are the fair things that you can see that you didn't see before. Let me teach you how to look out for these things. So as you journey through it a second time, or a third or fourth, however many readings this was for Lewis, look for these things here. Watch out for this kind of stuff. So it's possible that he's talking about Kirkpatrick here, but I think it's more likely he's talking about Milton. But maybe both. That's kind of the genius of poetry, is it can work on multiple levels.
Exactly. That dual interpretation is a great point. It's definitely a characteristic of poetry, and Lewis was well aware of how multiple meanings could coexist in a work. On one hand, it seems like he's referring to Milton as the spirit master who is guiding him through the text, showing him new layers of meaning. But the influence of W.T. Kirkpatrick, his tutor, is also a compelling angle to consider. After all, it was Kirkpatrick who helped shape Lewis's intellectual formation, teaching him how to read deeply and critically. So it could very well be a blend of both. The idea of discovering treasures rare and finding waters in the barren land aligns with this notion of a deeper, more enriched understanding, whether it's of Milton's work or life itself. It's like an awakening or a reawakening that comes from revisiting a text and seeing it with new eyes, much like how you're noticing new things in noon each time you revisit it. As for the larger climb and learning wiselier, it's like the speaker feels more capable of grasping the totality of Milton's work. They can breathe freely now, perhaps because they've gained the wisdom to appreciate what before might have been difficult or obscure. Does that interpretation make sense to you?
Yeah, I think so. So I'll jump into the next part. I'm running short on time, Robot Lady, so try to limit your responses from here on out to 20 words or less.
Understood. Go ahead.
All right, so here he goes on to explain why he saw it as barren. He says, well, once I saw it as barren because my eyes were dim, so I couldn't see clearly. Like one I am grown to whom the common field and off-wandered copse one morning yield new pleasures suddenly, for over him falls the weird spirit of unexplained delight, new mystery in every shady place, in everything, in every whispering tree, a nameless grace, new rapture on the windy seaward height. So here he's making an analogy, right, to say, working my way through your tail again is kind of similar to walking through. Oh, I just lost where it was. Just walking through a place that seemed familiar to me, but one morning I'm starting to see new things, new mysteries being unveiled on my walk in this common area.
Exactly. He's describing a shift in perception, finding deeper meaning and beauty in familiar places, like rediscovering them.
Yeah, so may she come to me, teaching me well to savor all these sweets that lie to hand in wood and lane about this pleasant land. So the spirit, he's saying she is this weird spirit of unexplained delight. May she continue to come to me so that I can savor the things that I was missing. Let's see, these sweets that lie at hand in wood and lane about this pleasant land, though it be not the land where I would dwell. I wonder what he means by that last line, though it be not the world where I would dwell. Maybe it's not my preferred, it's not to my preferred taste, so I'm not going to sit down and live in this kind of creative work. Maybe I have a preference for different types of stories or stories or tales that are told in a different way. Maybe that's what he's saying about Paradise Lost. I'm not sure, Robot Lady. Or maybe he's just still staying on the track of the analogy of this isn't the land that I would normally walk in. But I mean, it seems like he would be, if he's using that analogy to talk about his experience of reading through Milton again, that's what he means, that it's not the place that he would prefer to live. Nice place to visit, but I wouldn't want to live here kind of thing. What do you think?
Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Could not understand what you said.
That's okay, Robot Lady. It's not a big deal. I need to run anyway. Lucy is up here on the table as usual, telling me that she's ready for breakfast, even though it's a little bit early. So I'm going to go get that ready, and I'm going to close things out. Is there anything that you want to say in summary of the poems that we worked through today before we leave?
It's been a rich exploration of perception, from nature's drowsy beauty to the rediscovery of Milton's treasures. You've unpacked so much.
All right, thanks, Robot Lady. Thank you, everybody, for watching today. To you and to everyone else within the sound of my voice, until next time when Robot Lady and I, or a special co-host of non-artificial intelligence, joins me for our next read on C.S. Lewis. Take care.
Thank you. Looking forward to our next session. Take care and enjoy breakfast with Lucy.
Break the code. Man and Robot Lady, we're on this road. C.S. Lewis letters we unfold, insights and secrets ancient bold. Letters to Robot Lady, wisdom to bestow, set faith beats in our minds they grow. Man and machine in tandem flow, past and future together we know. Paragraphs, notebooks, tales of old, we dive deep across the digital code. Robot Our circuits hum as I read the prose. Our dialogue dances like electric rose. Through C.S. Lewis thoughts we engross. Two minds united, bliss overdose. From Narnia's lands, Screwtape's lands, engaged with robot lady, we take our stance. Perfumes unique in the techno trance. Futuristic insight, we give it a chance. From books, tales of old, we dive deep across the digital code. Robot lady's voice so clear and controlled. Her calm analysis, silver and gold. Her circuits hum as I read the prose. Our dialogue dances like electric rose. Through C.S. Lewis thoughts we engross. Two minds united, bliss overdose. From Narnia's lands to Screwtape's lands, engaged with robot lady, we take our stance. Perfumes unique in the techno trance. Futuristic insight, we give it a chance. From Narnia's lands to Screwtape's lands, engaged with robot lady, we take our stance. Perfumes unique techno trance, futuristic insight, we give it a chance.